Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Freo Bigfooty podcast. This week we're going to have a quick review of Fremantle's outstanding win against Geelong in round 9, celebrating Pav's 300th along with his 600th goal. And then we will have a quick chat with Gil, our old mate from the US, and then we'll have a quick look at the upcoming game against the Bulldogs this week at Etihad. Obviously, Peel had the bye this week with the Waffle State game, so no Peel game to have a look at this week, which is some pretty mad fixturing by the Waffle, with a chance for a lot of people to go down and have a look with the bye week in particular. But that's for another day. This week, joining us as usual, and we're super excited with not only his bearded mullet man getting in the VFL squad, but his big footy buddy also getting a call up to the squad this week. Seppo, how are you, mate?
Oh, I'm good, and it's great news all round. Even just have the buys open and just normal footy return. It's great to be back in and seeing a nice couple of things happen with our team.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a bit of a watershed moment, I think, for the season, and depending upon how that result went, either going in 4-5 or 5-4, it certainly had a different outlook on the season. With and as we all knew, the draw was going to open up a little bit, but. You can only, as they say, take it 1 week at a time. But that win certainly gives us the impetus to move into the second part of the season after the bye with a lot more confidence than what we had before that, especially with the number of players we've got sort of coming back shortly as well.
And it's great as a supporter, even just to get that win and carry over for 2 weeks, without having to worry about another game. It's a long time in between those bye weeks, and hopefully the players definitely made the most of it. But it was just great to get the result, especially against the Cats, and be a pretty convincing win too.
Yeah, and obviously Pav couldn't have had a better way to start his 300th game with a dart-like pass from Stephen Hill after about 19 seconds and then slotting it from the tight angle. So couldn't have got the crowd off to a better start.
Yeah, it was great that he got that goal and ticked over his 600th as well. But I think the key to winning this game was just the start we had. It was great to knock in 3 quick goals in succession and even just start spreading it around and not being too Pav-centric. And a lot of the other guys got on. I think it was Mzungu and might have been Ballas that got on the goals early on. It was just great to see that we've had a nice spread, and it's been consistent all year with our goal kicking. Just an all-round great performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and instead, I think the important thing was that all of our leaders stood up in that game. We've had guys sort of stand up bits and pieces, but it was one of those games when probably you consider all of our A-graders who are out there probably played to their potential, and that's what you want to see. And when those guys do, everyone else below them steps up. We had guys like Fife play a great game, Mundy, Ballas, Pav, obviously. So it was just good to see those and Fife, those guys just sort of stand up, and that's what you need with those sort of sides. And our sort of lower run guys come along for the ride.
And it was sort of good to see that there was a lot of work done with some of those younger guys, and it was hard to fault too many performances. Like, it was really, no one really sort of screamed out for a mission for this week's upcoming game. But it was great to see everyone sort of live for the occasion, and you sort of want that effort every week, and you don't get Pav turning 300th game every single week. So you just hope they can replicate that effort all season now, and not just hope it's a one-off event.
No, well, that's it, and that's the sort of thing we want to see, and especially in terms of the like the way, the intensity that we played. And it probably sort of took us a bit back to last year, and even probably the first game of the year against Collingwood, particularly in the second half. But the other guy I thought played a brilliant game, particularly in the first half when the game was there to be won, was Stephen Hill. And you see guys sometimes talk about, why do teams not bother? Why would you bother doing Stephen Hill? He doesn't have a lot of impact. But when you let him loose like that, you can see why. His ability to cut teams up is just unprecedented for our side, and he's such an important player.
Yeah, he's been quite lethal with the boot. But the thing that I sort of got to probably see better, I'm not sure if you watching it the game really saw, but Mundy's work in close and his composure with his hands, the way he sort of fitted out from congestion was brilliant, almost as good as what Fife and Barlow have been. Mundy did a top-notch job right in the guts and really helped us win those clearances. And I think the stats ended up with 46-28, so we really dominated in the clearances, and it was great to see Mundy starting a lot of that right in the guts. And there was a passage of play just vividly picture his little bit of composure. He sort of feigned and waited for the right moment to feed the ball out to, I think it was Fife, and then on to Lockie Neal running by. It's just a little brilliant passage of play. It's great to see that they're all starting to click, and then we can keep those three mainstays in the midfield, Fife, Mundy and Barlow, all out there together, and you can just now start to see what we've produced in round one being replicated now. So it's great to see that we're getting that intensity and combination of guys working well together.
Yeah, as you said, it's probably been a bit of hit and miss all in that first half of the season with those guys in there, with Barlow missing a couple of games and Fife out for a couple of games. And it just, even though they're probably used to playing each other, it does take a while just to get back to that sort of chemistry that they had last year. So, but, as you said, I think we sort of sometimes take Mundy a bit for granted, and he's just his ability in close and just clean hands is, as you said, just a joy to watch. So, the other obviously catalyst for us in that game would be obviously Ballantyne, especially with his goal in the second half, or in that second quarter goal along with Fife's mark. Just sort of, if there was any sort of doubt about the game, probably the unfortunate thing in the quarters, we probably should have finished them off by half time, and we sort of left that door open a little bit, and probably still missing that killer touch that we probably, Ross Lyon would like to see. Change that to 6-4 or 7-3, and all of a sudden it's game over.
Yeah, I suppose we were creeping out to a nice victory in that last quarter. We probably took the foot off again, and I think Geelong pegged a couple back and got it back down to close to 18 points. And I think Tommy Sheridan put the sealer on with a couple of minutes to go. It's great to see him to get on the board and take a good, quite contested mark playing out of the forward line there and under a bit of heat. But it is sort of worrying that we can't put a full quarter effort in. We are having moments, and when you do have those moments when you fall asleep, you hear players talk about it all the time with such an even comp that some teams will cut you up. So it's something we've still got to work on. Can't be fully pleased with that performance, but we've just got to make sure that we don't give opportunity, let the opposition have a sniff and really pressure them and keep on pushing goals through.
Yeah, and just the amount of, it's probably in terms of contested ball and stuff like that, and I know you mentioned the clearances earlier, but that's probably just the biggest disparity I've seen in a long time with Geelong. Normally they are very tough at the ball, and a lot of their sort of players that you're expecting to stand up just didn't look like it on the day. So it was just a dominating performance, and it's sometimes interesting to show that stats, like, obviously those key stats, but then when you look at things like fantasy footy stats, if you look at their overall team, Geelong were certainly higher on the day than Fremantle were. If you look at the key stats, it really makes no difference and shows really how useless those stats are sometimes.
Yeah, they can be misleading at times, but you sort of see that Geelong are sort of changing as a team, and they just got a bit of a touch-up by Sydney tonight. So it's it's interesting times that Geelong aren't the same team as they were over the last couple of years, so they are showing signs, and they've got a couple of different players out there now, but it was just great to even just say that we've got the wood over them and notch another good win.
Yeah, it's interesting with Geelong, because obviously they've got a lot of older guys who are still quality players, like obviously Corey Enright, Stevie Johnson, Jimmy Bartell, those type of blokes. But then there's a sort of that big gap in the middle where they don't have a lot, and then obviously they've got these younger guys coming through. So it'll be an interesting couple of seasons to see how they sort of go with that, with their list and what they decide to do with it, because they do have some quality youngsters coming through, but it's going to take them a while to recycle, I think, after a couple of the other guys do retire. So it was interesting last week as well to see that, particularly early on, that Geelong was trying to go through Michael Johnson as much as possible with Jimmy Bartell, and they were, it was probably quite an effective ploy, to be honest. Though, Jimmy probably missed a couple of uncharacteristic shots at goal for him. So it'll be interesting to see how many teams, other teams, decide to try and go that way throughout the year. But then again, not a lot of sides also have a Jimmy Bartell floating around there either.
No, that is true.
So, all right. Any other points you want to bring up from the game on that weekend, Seppo? Obviously, watching it over there.
No, other than that, a little bit of dominance that Hayden Ballantyne showed with that run up, almost goal of the week contender again. I think he done it. Actually, won goal of the year a couple of years ago against Geelong with a similar run where he took on everyone. But it was just great to see that he's got his form back up, and you just hope that he can transfer and keep those same boots and everything he's doing, just bring it over to the East Coast, and we can watch that same dazzling skill again, because we're only sort of seeing him put on those big shows at home. It'll be great to see him put on that same time performance over here, and he's got a chance to do it this Sunday.
Well, that's it. I mean, and I think that was the interesting thing. Like, there was obviously a lot of talk after the grand final last year, and whether there's been some stories or talk about him not being 100% before the game, but once you're out there, that's the way it is. But I thought his first game against Collingwood this year was probably his best away game for a long, long time, and then, as you said, he's probably hasn't replicated that since then. So hopefully we'll get to see him come out this weekend, perform well at Etihad, and obviously Fremantle enjoy the ground there. So it should, and the Western Bulldogs coming off a tough game against Gold Coast last week. But before we sort of get into that, we'll have a quick chat with Gil, who's going to join us from the US, and then we'll come back and have a look at the game against the Bulldogs shortly. And joining us this week on the Freo Bigfooty podcast, all the way from America to celebrate Pav's 300th, we've got Gil joining us, otherwise known as a stateside docker. Thanks for joining us, Gil.
Hey, Gav. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Excellent. And obviously, very rare milestone last week, especially or certainly in WA with the 300 milestone for Pav. But obviously, even better was the performance by the boys overall. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what. I've never seen us this year get off to a quicker start. Take a look at that, and to get 2 goals within the first 2 minutes of the game was spectacular. And I've been so used to Freo sort of coming from behind in the early stages. So in the script, it was just phenomenal. Pav getting that 599th goal within a minute, and then Tendai Mzungu coming through, and then Nat Fife kicking a goal a few minutes later. And then I thought it was kind of just desserts when Pav got his 600th goal, because as so many opposition defenders have done, Harry Taylor was kind of wearing him like a bad fitting jacket, and he got that free kick and nailed it. And so I thought it was beautiful, and typical Pav, he just completely downplayed his own milestones, both on the ground and then afterward when he was interviewed. And you talk about someone who is just a consummate team player and completely unselfish. That's Pav.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it was I don't know, we'll probably talked about it a little bit with Seppo earlier in the pod, but it was just really great to see all our team leaders step up. I think it's really probably the first time, maybe since the Collingwood game, but I don't even think in the Collingwood game we sort of had all of our really good players standing up at the same time, and it was, it's certainly been a while since that's happened, so it was terrific to lead into the bye and just give the guys a bit of momentum.
Absolutely, and the thing is that I had talked about on the Bigfooty chat board was I really thought, like many of us did, that the Geelong game was really a must-win. And even though it's still early in the season, I just felt like if we had won that game and came away from that 5-4, carried the momentum to the break, to the bye, and then you look ahead, 9 very, very winnable games from here on. And even if the team won't admit it, even if Coach Lyon is talking about 1 game at a time, just looking ahead, it would just be phenomenal to come out of this period of time at 14-4 and then have 4 games left, one of which is against Brisbane. Then you take a look, and we've got Port and we've got Hawthorn both at home. And we go to the Cattery, and we've already won down there last year, and we certainly made the Cats look very vulnerable. And then on top of all of that, you think about the potential for a bunch of guys coming into the side, like Scott Gumbleton, finally, hopefully he'll be healthy. You look at Anthony Morabito. Everyone's excited about his being included in the lineup and getting a game. Colin Sylvia, I imagine if I know that there's been so much controversy about him, but if he has his head right and he can provide a great deal for us. And then the miracle of miracles, if Sun somehow is able to come back before what will hopefully be a finals campaign, we still could end up having a very special season.
Absolutely, and it was good to see Sun finally get his crutches off the other day, so he's back walking now on his normal 2 feet and starting the rehab towards that hopeful round 2021 return if all things going well. So, yeah, as you said, it was funny when you were talking about before, Gil, just the momentum change going into the break or into that bye, being 5-4 after that performance. Sort of everyone's sort of looking ahead and going, wow, the season's certainly not over. Top 4's, definite chance and all this sort of stuff where, as you said, you're going 4-5 and all of a sudden the doom Sayers would be out, and it's a completely different feel.
It is. It's funny. We were talking earlier before our conversation on the pod about the similarities I find between, in baseball, my New York Mets and the Freo Dockers and the fans being similar. I think Dockers fans and Mets fans, we both have a tendency to be a little bit neurotic, and we both tend to have this feeling about waiting for the other shoe to drop and a feeling of dread. And it's interesting that I think that as Docker fans, we're in a new position this year because the expectations are so high after last year. And I think, I don't know about you, but I think many of us were expecting us after the first 9 to perhaps be 6-3 or 7-2. And I don't think any one of us forecast dropping a game to North Melbourne or maybe even losing to Sydney, although the SCG has been so tough for us to play there. So it's really a big test to not panic, to not throw the baby out with the bathwater when we haven't gone so well. And also, I don't think anyone could foresee that Hawthorn would be really, really hit by the injury bug the way they've been, or for also North Melbourne to be doing as well as they are, or Gold Coast to be doing as well as they are. So it's going to be a real fight.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talked about it probably before the start of the season. Although the Hawthorn, the amount of injuries they've had has been pretty horrendous, they actually really do have a very old team. A lot of their players are over 30. And they're going to be more susceptible to those injuries like our guys are as well. But, it's just unfortunate for them they've had them all hit at the same time. So, I still wouldn't certainly count them out at the end of the year, that's for sure. And, we're starting to get some of our guys back. And as you said, it's just a matter of finding that right mix between now and then. I think if you looked at it, considering the amount of 6-day breaks the club had, which are always tough to come back from, I think they'll probably look back out of the first 9 games and really... Probably just that North Melbourne game, I think, would be the one they'd really kick themselves about. It was, we don't like losing games at home. And it wasn't probably even much the loss, but the way we played and just kept bombing the ball in 50. Obviously the loss of Ballantyne to that silly suspension hurt as well. And I think that'll be the game if it come back at the end of the season. If they miss out on that top 4 or top 2 spot, I think that North Melbourne game will certainly be the one that they'll be kicking themselves over, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because one of the things that I've learned to appreciate about footy and love so much is that when you do lose, you can't wait to get back out there and rectify what went wrong the week before. And really interesting story today in the West Australian, Hayden Ballantyne talking about his approach to away games. And he really basically was admitting that there are certain things in his routine for away games that he needs to change. He talked about sleep patterns. He talked about his diet when he's away, because I'm sure many fans have noticed that when he's playing at home, he seems to really lift and be a different player than he is on the road. And none of us can forget that performance in the grand final and how disappointing it was for him. And he just wasn't the same presence that he was when he was playing last week. Although you look at the first game of the season against Collingwood, and he was the proverbial live wire.
All right, anything else you'd like to add about the game from last week, or any other sort of observations you've had from the first half of the season coming into the bye break?
Well, I'll tell you what, looking at the various observations, I think the biggest improvement that we could possibly hope for is really going to be to the forward line. Because I think with Gumbleton coming in, and hopefully that'll happen in a few weeks, and if he's able to give us anything there, and if Colin Sylvia is able to come into the team and play up forward a little bit and play in that midfielder's role, I think 2 things are going to happen. I think, one, you won't see this bomb it long to Pav strategy continue to go on, and it's great to see the Dockers moving away from that. But with Gumbleton coming in, of course, obviously another tall target would really help. And from what I read, he and Pav were working really well together in preseason. And I was really, really happy to see that Ross Lyon had a lot of praise for Colin Sylvia in his last game in the Waffle about how, and this is the big thing, playing with enthusiasm and playing with passion. Because the stat that jumped out at me when I looked over them was that he had 6 tackles. And that's, as we know, a big part of Ross's game plan about forwards applying a lot of pressure. So I looked past the 3 goals that Colin Sylvia had in the Waffle, really looked at the tackles, looked at the kicks and the possessions, 13 possessions, and he took a bunch of marks too. And if we get that kind of addition with those 2 guys, and if Sun is able to come back toward the end of the year, you're talking about a really, really dangerous forward line that we have lacked. And it's also really encouraging last week, going back to Pav's game, Chris Main. Chris Main seems to be greatly revitalized. I don't think he's been as lively as he was at any point this season. And I guess the shocking thing is if you look at his stats and if you would have thought that after 9 games he'd have maybe a handful of set shots and missing the majority of them, you never would have believed it. And I think the other really key thing in the forward line is I think we've got to be able to have some situation in which Nat Fife is able to go forward more. And I think maybe with Morabito coming back off of the injury, that'll allow that to happen. Colin Sylvia coming back will allow that to happen, where you can also send Barlow forward for a little bit of time and Mundy forward for a little bit of time. So I think the biggest thing is going to be adding depth. And, as I said, if we get that forward line much improved and going, we're going to be very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and it's hard to argue with any of those points, Gil. I think you're spot on there, and obviously just keeping our back six in play, and obviously hopefully we'll get McFarlane back after the break. Although in fairness, Silvani's done a terrific job since deputising for him. But I mean, McFarlane is still our best defender, so it'll be certainly handy to have back. But it's good to know that Silvani is able to come in and do a job if required, and that's the whole benefit of having that depth in your squad.
Absolutely. I think when you think about Silvani, you really think that he came of age a couple of years ago in that elimination final against Geelong when he was minding Tom Hawkins and keeping him very quiet. That was a tremendous game for him. And you look at what he did against Jay Schultz a couple of weeks ago, and he was very solid there. And I thought it was a brilliant move last week, too, when Coach Lyons subbed him off and went with Matt DeBoer when Geelong decided to go smaller in their forward line. And one of the things that's interesting when you talk about Luke McFarlane that I'm really interested in is that now that he's healthy, coming back off the break, is him matching up again against Tex Walker, because you think back to 2012 and you think about McFarlane's not being available there. And Silvani had a tough time in that game, and we were eliminated. So I think that's a battle I've always wanted to see. And you kind of wonder, what if McFarlane had been available? And I think that last year, I think McFarlane was really the most important player, the one player we really could not afford to lose. And so it was good to see him get through last year. So you're hoping that he'll get through. You're hoping Sandilands will last through the whole year. And it's funny because when we talk about being cursed by the footy gods in terms of injury, in a way we've been kind of blessed, because if you look at what's happened this year, I'd much rather have situations happen with Sun, with Luke McFarlane, and also with Scott Gumbleton, and have that happen early in the year rather than late in the year. So you just hope everybody holds up and we can be as close to full strength as we can be. I guess you guys say touch wood, we say knock on wood here, that everybody will be okay.
The other quick thing, Gil, obviously that there's been a little bit of talk this week in the news about obviously some potential American recruits, and obviously one of them being a sort of guy slightly taller than Sandlands and Mason Cox. What do you know? What do you want to sort of? Have you got anything there that you've heard about over there, or anything you'd like to add in regards to those recruiting?
Yeah, I would be feeling a little bit of role reversal, because I know how in Australia many of you are excited about players like Andrew Bogut playing in the NBA and Nick O'Hearn having some success in golf overseas. So it's a fun role reversal for me. I would be just beyond super excited to see a fellow American wearing the purple. And to the Dockers, hey, if the Dockers need me to do any recruiting of a countryman, I'm totally there. I've read a little bit about Mason Cox. I'm amazed that he's actually a little bigger than Big Sandy, and has really great agility, and he scored really well in the beep test and some of the other things. And the funny thing is too, that scouting combine, I actually covered it a couple of years ago for the AFL Record, because it is about maybe 15 minutes away from my front door where those guys are tested. And also, a little known fact that you guys may not know is that we actually have an American on the team. Zach Clark, his dad is African-American, as am I, and so that's a thrill to have him. And also, I have to admit, I feel a special affinity for Tendai Mzungu. He also has, of course, African heritage, and I actually met his father last year during the grand final. And so, it would just really give me goosebumps if Mason Cox is somehow picked. I just find it really incredible to be watching the AFL website and tuning into Footy Feed and hearing somebody with an American accent. It's really crazy. So I hope somehow he'll make the right choice and choose us over some of the other clubs that are after him.
Yeah, no, it'll certainly be interesting to see. And although there hasn't been a lot of success with American players, I mean, obviously Pike, but he's Canadian, so it doesn't quite count. But he's got the background. But there is 3 Americans on list at the moment, and hopefully we'll see some of those. Because I mean, obviously they're athletes. Their athletic skills are certainly a step above most of our Australian counterparts. And just even the other day, having a look at the Andrew Wiggins vertical leap test was unbelievable. So hopefully we'll see some of a few more Americans down there, and obviously the more we get here, the more interest it'll create in the game worldwide, which is all you can ask for. So hopefully the club hears you on board, Gil, and takes you on in an advisory role, seeing you're not far away from the recruiting process there.
Well, I'll tell you what, my real dream would be being a boundary rider on Friday Night Footy. That would be to me a dream, or being able to call some play-by-play. But you mentioned the other guys on the list, Jason Holmes and Eric Wallace. And I've seen Eric Wallace up close and personal at that combine a couple of years ago, and I had a funny feeling about him that he would get picked. And here's why. One of the skills that I think is really hard for any American, and I count myself among this group, is being able to bounce. And it's a skill that you guys probably take very much for granted. But to me, the hardest thing holding a footy in my hand is actually bouncing it and being able to run with it and being able to have some success at that. But I think the very biggest skill that any American player would require would have to be kicking, because you look at some of the other athletic facets of the game, and I would have to think things like handballing, marking, those things would kind of come naturally. But kicking, it's interesting because there's one NFL player that I've seen who I think would be really, really good in Aussie rules, and that is Michael Crabtree, who plays for the San Francisco 49ers, because he, I guess in translating it into footy, he'd be a great overhead mark. The way he receives passes is really great. He's very strong, very physical, and very big. Now, the only thing is, you would really have to teach him how to kick. And looking at Eric Wallace with North Melbourne, I'm thrilled for his success. And I really do hope that he makes it. And he's the kind of player that I would say, if he were playing in that North Melbourne game against us, that, of course, I'd be barracking as usual for the Dockers, but would really hope that Eric Wallace would be able to kick a couple of goals. And I think that he's being tried in the ruck and also in defense. So I monitor him pretty closely and read the Ballarat paper on the internet. He's playing for the North Ballarat Roosters, and hoping he'll do really well and hoping he'll make some history.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly one thing, and I know that Fremantle certainly are exploring all options also with the Irish boy from Sean Hurley from last year as well. So hopefully we'll see some extra players on the list, and some, obviously, those guys with the being able to either perform a role or certainly get into the starting 22, which would be great for everyone to see.
It really would be. And also, don't forget South Africa too, because there's the academy down there, and I know the Dockers have played there. Some matches down there in their past. That would be a really, really great thing. And then, of course, over here we've got the USAFL, and it's nowhere near the level of competition that it is even among country leagues down there in Australia. But it's still a nice breeding ground. And there's a new film coming out, I don't know if you're aware of it, called Aussie Rules the World. And our own midfielders coach, Brett Kirk, went on this mission around the world to try and get people interested in Aussie rules and get them to play it. He went all over the world. And a lot of people are saying from the AFL that it's really coming into a situation where it's about survival, that you have so many sports outside of Australia pervading through Australia, but Aussie Rules has yet to do that on a global scale, except if you get lunatics like me. But hopefully it's really going to spread more. And that's another facet of my involvement, that I would totally love to be an ambassador for the game. And I know in my classes that I teach, I'm trying to footify my whole classroom, and one student at a time.
No, absolutely. And it's great to have those, and you need those sort of ambassadors over there to help try and push it. And that's, hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that down the track. But we better let you go, mate, because I know it's early morning over there. So once again, thanks for joining us. And as I said, we'll have you on in a couple of months' time, hopefully, and we'll hopefully continuing our march up the ladder.
That'd be great, Gav. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye for now.
All right.
So this week, Fremantle, coming after the bye, will be going up against the Western Bulldogs, who struggled, well, played pretty well for 3 quarters actually against Gold Coast, but then sort of ran out of gas and ended up sort of losing quite comprehensively to the Gold Coast. And they've probably about as expected, I think, this year. They've, down near the bottom end of the ladder, but they've shown bits and pieces, but obviously unable to sustain it for 4 quarters. There probably was a little bit of a surprise maybe that Cooney got off last week, but they seem to have changed completely 180 degrees on this head-high tackling, bumping rule. So we'll see what happens. And, once again, we'll, some of our players seems to be the scapegoat for that rule change, obviously with Fife copying a few weeks ago. But the changes this week, Seppo, for us is obviously Luke McFarlane's been named to play, but probably still will be tested on the day. Brady Gray gets to make his debut into the squad. Garrick Ibbotson coming back after a couple of weeks, or probably a good solid month actually at Peel. Colin Sylvia also, after 3 goals in his last outing for Fremantle, has been named in the 25. And unfortunately, Matt DeBoer's out with a medial ligament injury, so out from 4 to 6 weeks, which is probably disappointing for him. And although he was the sub, I thought he showed a bit when he did come on, and certainly some intensity at the contest. For the Bulldogs, Tom Williams has come back in with Mitch Wallace, Nathan Horvat, Christian Howard and Jason Johannesson, while Clay Smith is out with a shoulder and Brett Goods is omitted. Probably a bit disappointing for him, especially on Indigenous round. Seppo, what do you think of the changes, mate?
Yeah, well, it's really disappointing to see DeBoer's got that injury and it's not a couple of weeks. It looks like it's a quite lengthy period of time. So this is probably a good opportunity where we've actually can cover for this position more than any others, where the inclusions of Brady Gray and Sylvia would almost be 2 players fighting for that spot that DeBoer plays, both big and nuggety type of hard players. And they've both been, well, Sylvia's had okay games at the Waffle, not fully standouts, but Brady's shown he's been quite consistent. And as my buddy on Bigfooty, I'm just glad that he's got up there and put his hand up and been named into this side. So you can see those 2 almost fighting, or you'd really think it'd come down to one of them to get the gig to replace DeBoer out of the side. It'll be interesting to see if Ibbotson's ready to go or he's covering for someone else. And you'd think that McFarlane and Silvani might be a straight swap, but it'll be interesting to see if they retain Silvani and have another way of shuffling. But I don't think with Dawson and Johnson as well that we can afford to carry 4, especially when you look at the Bulldogs forward line and the size of their key forwards. I think we can't go in with all 4 of those tall key defenders. So really it might be a spot with Silvani being dropped for McFarlane, and maybe DeBoer's spot goes to one of Brady Gray or Colin Sylvia. But it will be interesting and a point of discussion who gets that spot. But I suppose we'll find out tomorrow after the players have trained, and I suppose we won't really know until the final squad's are named, because probably both of them might be on the flight across. But you just won't know until those final team sheets are in. But it's great to see that if Brady Gray does get his debut, it will be on Indigenous round, and for an Indigenous player from Tassie, it will be great to see him run out there, and that beautiful strip of ours will be wearing the white inverse of last year's great design.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be interesting to... because there was a little bit of talk on the forums as well, Seppo, about the fact that if they keep Silvani in, they could move McFarlane forward. And even depending on which way it goes, you could rotate either McFarlane or Silvani forward and back between the 2 of them. Obviously, Silvani has played forward a little bit in the past for Fremantle, and he does lead hard at the contest. His kicking for goal is not terrific, but he does provide that contest down forward. So, I mean, as you said, I would find it maybe a little bit difficult carrying that many tall blokes, particularly Eddie had, but I mean that is another option that Lyon has if he decides to go that way.
I much prefer the structure of even just running Main and Clark and sort of Fife into form in the forward line and let Pav do his work where he does it best. But I really don't see, I'm not an advocate of pushing these guys that, Silvani and McFarlane are really true key defenders, and it's almost wasted or playing them out of form, because if you do play them forward and they don't work out, it's almost signing their papers, and then one of them, well, obviously not McFarlane, but you'll look at dropping them next week on poor form. So I really hope that we stick to a nice structure that we can be consistent with, and make the like-for-like changes and give the other guys a chance that are up there. And I think we've got that forward structure that can work. It's a bit hard without Walters out there, but providing we've got Clark and Pav and Main and Ballas all going well with Fife and young Lockie Neal, or maybe Brady if he gets his chance going forward, that can work for us. And I hope we don't muck around too much with pushing these guys forward.
Yeah, I think as much as I'd love to see your buddy get a game, mate, I think Brady Gray will go over for the experience, and I think he's been doing reasonably well at Peel, but I think he'll probably go over for the game and then maybe duck down to Tassie and during the bye week for Peel and say hello to the family down there.
He's just come back from a holiday during the bye round, so it'd be nice for him to get 2 trips down there in quick succession.
Yeah, absolutely. But as you said, I think Lyon at some point has got to pull the trigger on Sylvia just to see what he's got there. And as I said, I mean, if you've got to look at it and sort of say, well, is he going to be good enough to do something for us in this season? And if he is, he has done a lot of time, and I know that he may not be 100% of doing what he's needed to, but I think if you're going to bring him over, you've got to see what he does. And he is a perfect replacement for De Boer. He plays that same role. He probably isn't quite as defensive-minded, but at the same time, he probably does give us a little bit more forward potency. And if you're looking for that 2 extra goals a game, which Ross Lyons talked about all pre-season, I think he has the potential to help us do that, where I can't see Brady Gray doing that, particularly in the way that he's played this season for Peel. He generally plays either in the middle or in a sort of a role a bit across half-back as well. Haven't seen him play forward too often. He sort of plays more of that tagging role. So I just, with De Boer going out, you'd have to think that if Sylvia's ever going to get a call-up, this would be the week. I mean, the other interesting one is obviously Ibbotson in the squad, but once again, you'd have to drop someone out of that back six, and because I'm not real confident on Ibbotson playing in a forward role, and so
especially if he's still testing out his shoulder, you'd want him to really be confident. And I'm not sure if he played or got good numbers in the last Peel game. Did he have a good run? I think was it the week before the state game. He's
put in a solid month at Peel, so I don't think the shoulder's going to be the problem. And he probably does look a bit of a class above down there a lot of the time. He sort of probably sometimes looks a little bit too casual, and I think it's sort of like the intensity is just not the same. But I think a lot of people forget how good he was in that first half of the season for us last year.
And he was one player that we really missed when it got to grand final time. So just a matter of, is it Lee Spur, is it Sutcliffe, is it Duffield? Like, are we going to drop one of these other guys to squeeze him in, or is he just going to have to bide his time, or we're going to have to make a couple more shuffles or reinvent himself on the wing? Yeah.
And that's going to be the interesting thing. And obviously guys like Sheridan as well, like what happens to those. Obviously Subban's sort of come along a little bit in the last, probably 2 or 3 weeks after probably an indifferent start to the year after last year. So, I mean, the good thing is, especially when you look at that Peel list now, we've got a lot of guys who are pushing for spots there now. The injury list is gradually coming down, so it's going to be tough for spots. And as Ross Lyons said, I don't think too many guys are going to his office and offering to give up their spot for someone else. So
yeah, that's true. And I suppose when you look at that big list of interchange players, you'd almost be happy with any of those players out there or any combination of them, because they've all sort of shown signs they can play really well, and they all sort of offer something in their own way. So it's just a matter of how we want to match up and what we want to get out of all those guys.
Yeah. And obviously with the Bulldogs, they're still in that sort of slight rebuilding mode at the moment with, a number of players going in and out. And obviously Clay Smith's a bit of a loss for them with the shoulder.
And he's also suspended.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're going to get suspended, now's the time to do it if you've got an injury as well. So at least you get sort of rid of both of them. I mean, their midfield is still very strong. And when you look at guys like Boyd, Griffin, Liberatore in particular, and Cooney, I mean, that's a pretty solid start. That's a pretty solid four. But you just see them struggling to kick goals. And even Jackson McRae's been a bit of a revelation this year. So their back four looks pretty good. They just seem to struggle at either end of the ground. And, I mean, you'd have to think Fremantle are going to be warm favourites, but I think it's certainly not a side they want to estimate going into there, especially with the midfield.
Yeah, I think they have some of those midfielders have been down on form recently. I know like Griffin and Cooney and even Bob Murphy out of the half-back line, they haven't been playing their best footy. I know Sean Higgins is getting back to his best, but the guys that sort of really stand out for them are the guys that you mentioned, McRae, Liberatore, and even Kramer is starting to get better after his slow start for them. So looking across their list, it's you can sort of see some excitement for them, like what they'd have out in the field. But in terms of a general quality of list, I think we've sort of got them well covered. But it will be just interesting to see if any of these sort of lesser lights they've got in the interchange or get an opportunity, or if they'll just make a small couple of final changes to cover those two omissions they've got.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at their forward line. They're going to have to be really, they're probably going to have to drop their eyes quite a bit. I mean, Cramery's more of a leading forward than sort of bustling in. They haven't really got anyone who can, although they've got guys, if the ball gets to ground level, guys like Dalhouse and those sort of, even G and Syracuse is, they're quite, and even Stringer to a degree, are quite handy when the ball hits the turf. But unfortunately, unless Williams or Cramery can manage to do that, you just see where they're going to struggle to, especially with Fremantle, if they can manage to get that loose man, and especially if it's Michael Johnson, you're going to think they're going to struggle to, get enough of the ball in deep inside 50 to hurt us. So they're either going to have their midfielders kick a lot of goals, or, they're just going to have to make, hope Cramery or Williams can bring it down, and guys like Dalhouse and those sort of blokes can get enough crumbing goals.
And it's always those smaller forward types that seem to trouble us. I know Dalhouse in the past has always torn us one, or at least got onto a couple. So I think the smaller guys have got their work cut out for them more than the key posts of what Johnson, Dawson and McFarlane or Silvani will. And
I think that was a big loss, for especially in the Geelong game as well, for them, with no Christensen or Stokes playing. I think either one, or especially both of them, would have made a big, would have certainly made it much more difficult for us, because those sort of players do tend to hurt us. And if you get anyone who's got that bit of pace, even like for us, Ballantyne, just having him out there with that sort of pace just makes it difficult for sides to be able to contain them. So who do you see? Obviously, as we talked about with their midfield this week, obviously they've got a number of good midfielders in there. Who do you think Crowley will go to this week, Seppo?
Well, you'd probably say Griffin, based on his running ability over Boyd, that plays, I think, more of an inside role, and same with Liberatore. So I don't know who he's gone to in the past, but I'd say probably Griffin would be the more likely candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, Boyd reminds me, and it's probably a little bit like Prentice. He gets a lot. He gets a lot of the ball, and he'll sort of get a lot of handballs, but he doesn't hurt you as much as those other guys. You can allow him to have. I mean, obviously last week Prentice was pretty solid against Collingwood, but you know what I mean. Like a lot of that, you'd rather have him have 30 possessions than have one of their other players get 20. Which, like, if Griffin gets 20 entries inside 50, he's going to hurt you. Where you don't see Boyd doing the same. So, yeah, I think one of those guys will certainly get the role. That's for sure. And obviously, I mean, Morris is always a pretty sort of steady defender, along with Jordan Roughhead and Pick, and they've got some pretty tough nuts down there, even Easton Wood. So it'll be interesting to see if Picken does go to Ballantyne as well, or whether he goes up and tries to play on that sort of Mundy, Fife Barlow type matchup.
Well, I suppose, do they have any more of a run with player? Like, Picken had the job on Ablett last week, but are they going to apply that same type of a tag to Stephen Hill, or do you think that Fife at some stage starts copying a tag?
Well, I mean, Liberatore generally plays in the clinches, so you'd think he might go head-to-head with Mundy. But you're right, they don't. I mean, Mitch Wallace possibly could do it. I mean, sure, Higgins probably doesn't have the discipline, I don't think. And then Kobe Stevens, probably...
There's more of a run with player head-to-head on the wing.
I mean, they don't really have that sort of standout guy who can do that role. I know they've got it. They may have the young bloke debut this week, Marcus Bontempelli as well. And he looks a good size. So
he's a very big midfielder. I think he's more of a all-round big body utility almost in the midfield. So I think he's already played a couple of games. So he's done all right for them, I think, in the past. Yeah,
I think this is his debut though. I don't think he's played.
No, I think he played last week because he's not named as an in, so he's already in that side.
Yeah, you must. You're right. Yeah, so. But there you go. Shows how much I watched last week of the of the game. So, but I mean, it's obviously good for them, and they're going to obviously try and get those younger guys in. And obviously, Jake Stringer's shown a little bit as well. So they've got some really good young guys coming through, but they're probably still a little bit off. Some of those, the sides, they're probably top 10 or 11 is probably as good as most teams going around, but it sort of drops off a bit with guys who've probably got less experience after that. And you'd have to think that Fremantle will be just too strong across the board with the 22 they've got out there.
And it's great to see that we're going into Etihad with minus that one result against the Saints late last year when we've rested everyone. We've got a great record at Etihad under Ross Lyons. So hopefully we can continue that tradition and get a great result on that Sunday afternoon game. And hopefully the roof will be closed because it's a 3:20 start. But I'm not sure the forecast will be, but more than likely, and I think Ross mentioned it on PR early in the week, but he expects the roof to be closed, and hopefully they make that decision because I hate games in the afternoon with the shadow that's cast over the ground and trying to watch the ball go between light and dark. It's absolutely terrible at Etihad, so hopefully the roof is closed.
Yeah, I mean, is it the same when you're actually at the ground, Seppo? Or like, on TV it's terrible, but...
It's terrible on TV and it's terrible at the ground because it's just hard for your eyes to adjust, especially on the far side. And if the ball does go to the far side at one end of the ground, you're sort of relying on that screen, and that screen has the same problem as what you're looking at the telecast with the difference between the light and dark shades and quickly adjusting the camera focus. So it is an issue, and I just hope that roof is closed.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And I mean, especially now that just about most of the draw's done for TV anyway, I mean, you may as well look after the people watching it because, as you said, it is a terrible ground to watch when with the contrast between it. Even the Gold Coast last week was pretty hard to watch there, and that was outside, but with the stand and the way it was. But yeah, no, it was a terrible. It's a terrible place to watch when it's open and it's sunny. So.
Well, they're saying the forecast for Sunday is 50% chance of 0 to 5 mil of rain. It's going to be cloudy, patchy rain. So, and 17 degrees. So it'll be probably a call to say that if it's raining during the day, they might just close the roof up just to prevent any more. So yeah, should work into our favour. And it's great to see that, well, along with the old Razor Ray Chamberlain as the umpire, we've got some guys that I haven't really heard of, Sam Hay and Andrew Mitchell. So it's always a good sign. If you don't know them, it's a good thing. So hopefully umpires have a good round.
Yeah, well, I mean, Razor Ray did the game last week against Geelong and didn't sort of do too badly apart from the infamous decision with the guy on the, which wasn't his fault, but the guy off the emergency umpire on the bench, but with Crowley and Johnson. But the other interesting point, obviously, for this week was Zach Dawson playing his 50th game for Fremantle, which sort of come around pretty quick. So congratulations to him, and he's certainly an important cog of that back six, that's for sure. And we certainly notice it when he's not there.
And I think there's another sort of mini milestone with Daniel Pearce playing, I think, his 50th game for Freo. So it's really great to see that he's almost played every single game he's been with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and hopefully he continues to play well. I mean, he certainly started the year off, but he probably hasn't been as consistent as he was that first month. So, but he said, but he's shown in those probably first 3 or 4 games as the standard he's capable of. So hopefully we'll see a bit more of that come the next to the run home, at least for the last 10 weeks anyway. Any other points you want to bring up in this game, Seppo, before we bring in the tips?
No, other than the fact that I'm just looking forward to seeing this jumper design for the Indigenous round, and I reckon almost the white design is, even though it's exactly the same as last year's, it seems to look better on that white strip. So really looking forward to it and celebrating the Indigenous round. I just hope that all the fans pay their respect and don't act like idiots out there, and supporters pay respect to the round in the rightful way. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, I really like most of the Indigenous jumpers this time. I think they look really good. So, and obviously Fremantle's Indigenous jumper is also another one that sort of catches the eye. So it was, really good to see, those type of jumpers come out, and hopefully get a chance to, for those people who haven't, to go and get one. And obviously good feng shui as well with the, keeping with the everything sort of keeping the good luck in. So hopefully we'll continue on with those chevrons going that way. So what's your tip for this week, Seppo? What do you think?
Well, I've noticed they've got the line at sort of 35 points, so I'm going to play it safe and think we'll probably get around that 6-goal win. I don't see us absolutely flogging the Bulldogs. I sort of put myself down for a 38-point win for us. So I see a nice steady 4-quarter performance, maybe with the Bulldogs giving us a bit of a fright early on due to our slow start after the bye. But I think we'll be due for almost the same type of margin we won against Geelong.
Yeah, I think the guys will come out all guns blazing, and I think, as you said, there's going to be that competition for spots coming through in the next month, so I think they'll all be out there giving their best, and I feel confident that Fremantle should be a 2-goal-a-side better quarter, or 2-goal side better each quarter, so I think they're capable of around about a 48-goal win, so about 48 points I think Fremantle should win this game by, but obviously on the day we'll just need to see how the guys turn up. So, but I know Fremantle have a lot of those sort of Indigenous guys, and we've always been a club that's had a pretty strong Indigenous representation. So I think they'll certainly be going out there and giving it their all, and hopefully they'll be able to do themselves, obviously the round justice, and come away with a good win. All right. Any other points you want to bring up, Seppo, for any sort of anything happening before or after the game for those guys, either maybe travelling over for the match or?
No. Well, the only other announcement is for anyone listening in Melbourne, or if you've got Fremantle supporters that are capable of kicking a footy, have a look at the East Coast Derby grudge match thread I've put up for our Fitzroy Dockers versus the East Coast Eagles, where I think we're about 4 weeks away from our second derby, and we're looking for a couple more players to join our big squad to take on the guys over here. So hit me up on the forum or get in contact with Clinto, the other representative there, our captain, and we'd like to see some new faces down this year. And it's always a great, nice social event, and look forward to hearing from you if you're interested.
Awesome, and so if you do know anyone out there, guys, by all means, please get in touch with Seppo and see how we go, and hopefully you guys, Seppo, will be able to continue the sort of run over the Eagles that we've had over the last probably 3 or 4 years at least.
Yep.
So what was the result last year, Seppo? Anyway,
we did have a narrow loss, but we've got the wood over them in the overall standings, so it'll be great to get back on the winners list this year, but. Yeah, it'll be. It's amazing that the second derby is only a couple of weeks away. It's come around quick this year.
Yeah, as you said, the season seems to be nearly halfway through. It's certainly flying, and hopefully all of us as Freo supporters have got plenty to look forward to for the remaining second half of the year. So, all right, Seppo, if that's all we've got, mate, thanks again for joining us this week.
No worries, and good luck this weekend. I hope you watch a great performance and go Freo.
Absolutely, and. For those people travelling over, I hope you enjoy the game, and it's been obviously a few weeks before before we've seen Freo at home as well for those people over here. So we'll be looking forward to the game next week against Adelaide after that. So getting back to another home game, but hopefully take care of business first against the Bulldogs. Thanks for joining us again this week, and bye for now.